So, my name is Ruslan. I am a YouTuber, live streamer, which means that I'm used to talking to people with a chat bubble in front of me. Okay, so I'm at a disadvantage here because in a normal setting where I'm communicating, I would know what like 30% of the room is thinking. And I don't know what you're thinking, so just bear with me as we get through this. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my story, and then I'm gonna attempt to give you guys what I believe are the 7 steps to Christian flourishing on this side of eternity. My plan A was to be a professional basketball player. And then I discovered that I was 5'10" and a half. Give me my half. I got my Jordan 11s on, so 5'11". And I'm Armenian. An Armenian has never made it to the NBA. My buddy Rufat would say that if you factor in the Kardashians, we've taken more careers out of the NBA than we've added in. And I could never make it in the NBA because my people, we would never get off the bench because we loved the warm-up suits way too much. We would just keep those on and they wouldn't let us play. But I'm Armenian, and if you know anything about Armenia, Armenia was the first Christian nation, recognizing Christianity as the official religion. And unfortunately, Armenia has also had a ton of persecution, which culminated into the 1915 genocide and then the subsequent tension in that region between Turkey and Azerbaijan. And I'll spare you all the geopolitics. But long story short, me and my family came to America in 1991 as refugees because of the pogroms of Baku. Okay, the pogroms of Baku was this tension between the Arzis and the Armenians, and it was violent, and my dad had to escape, and then me and my mom stayed. And when we came to America, my mom and my dad split about 6 months later, and they split up because back in Baku, they were already having an adulterous relationship, and our family was a mess, and they split about 6 months later because my mom kept writing love letters to her boyfriend back in Russia, and I was the one that discovered these love letters because they had kissy marks on them, and I thought that they were for my dad, so I actually brought the letters to my mom, and that was the last straw that broke the camel's back, and my dad subsequently left. My mom goes into just a spiral of alcoholism, toxic man after toxic man. In our home, I've seen her be beat, I've seen her be brutalized. I've seen her have gashes on her face because of the violence that was in my home. And my dad wasn't in the picture because his girlfriend from the former Soviet Union came out and he started a whole new family. And so he was about a few minutes away, but my mom made it difficult for him to see me, and it was just a mess. And so I find myself going to Armenian Orthodox Church from the Oriental Orthodox arm of the church. I was an altar boy, and as I'm being an altar boy, there's some older kids in the neighborhood. They were teenagers. I'm about 7 or 8 at this point, and I ended up getting sexually assaulted, which was completely damaging to my psyche, and everything that followed afterwards was just one big pile on. My dad's not in my life. I feel demasculated. The community turns on me, and so I find myself at a very young age, 9, 10, 11 years old, just hating God, and hating the church, and hating faith, and boldly proclaiming at a very early age that I'm an atheist, that there is no God, and if there was a God, he definitely doesn't love me. That is how I felt. And this led me into just being a complete derelict of a kid, getting into all sorts of trouble, breaking into homes, selling weed, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, all up until the age of 11. I got arrested breaking into a home, which was crazy, that my mom then had to go and bail me out, and they did the whole thing where they separate us and interrogate us, and of course we all snitched on each other because that's what you do when you're a kid, right? And it was just a complete mess. And so here I am as a kid. I'm an atheist. I don't believe God exists, and if he does, he definitely doesn't love me. And in that process, God started to do a restorative work on my heart. And he started sending different people in my life to start planting seeds. And all of a sudden, everything from the people I was surrounded by to the environment I was in, a several year process came around of me slowly coming around to church and then leaning into apologetics, which is the study of the defense of the faith. So reading books like The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict and Case for Christ, and discussing all these different debates and all these different perspectives. And at around the age of 17, I give my life to Jesus, and I walk through these next steps that have completely transformed my life, where I literally went from being a complete derelict of a kid, troubled, probably on the path to jail, prison. A lot of my friends in high school did the majority of their natural life in prison. And somehow, all of this was diverted, and I found myself meeting a girl a year after high school that became my wife 4 years later, starting a career. I went from the NBA to being an independent Christian rapper, okay? True story, okay? So I pivot, I start doing music. We go through a journey of learning financial literacy. And now I've been married 16 years, together almost 20 years with my wife. We have 2 beautiful kids together. We serve in ministry together. And in hindsight, in reverse engineering this, what I hope to do right now is to compress time, because I know everyone here doesn't have everything figured out. I know even when I mention sexual assault, that statistically speaking, there are people in this room that have experienced it and perhaps never dealt with it. That when I talk about coming from a broken home and witnessing domestic violence and witnessing gang activities and witnessing that sort of trauma, that is relevant to some of you guys. Or maybe it isn't, but I think these next 7 points I'm gonna go over are going to be extremely practical and extremely pragmatic, and the way they overflow from a worldview where we put Jesus in his rightful place as king. Amen? Okay, so you guys ready for the 7 steps to Christian flourishing? You guys ready for the 7 steps to Christian flourishing? Okay. Step 1. This is considering you've already placed your faith in Jesus. Step 1, serve. Find somewhere where you can serve. Serving, according to Jesus, is how you demonstrate that the kingdom of God is near. The apostles, the disciples, they were arguing. This happens at least 2 times in their lifetime. It's in Luke. And even on the Last Supper, they're arguing about who is going to be the greatest among them. And Jesus says, the greatest among you is the one who serves the most. The greatest among you will be like the least of these. The first shall be last. He will be like a child. And so serving does something where we take the attention off ourselves and we remind ourselves that we are not the center of the universe. That you get to go and be the hands and feet of Jesus. I serve in my local church. I started from serving with the young adults group to the junior high and the middle school, which, those kids were a doozy. Let me tell you, young adults. And then junior high was hard, to high school, to cleaning toilets, to doing everything I could possibly do. And it was on the back of me serving and just being willing to serve. That could look like you stepping into a role where you're volunteering at a soup kitchen, but serve and get the attention off of yourself. Get the attention that you are not the center of the universe. I know that's what society wants to tell you. You're a snowflake. You're 1 in a million. There's no one like you, right? But when you serve, you take the attention off yourself and you put it on others, okay? And that would be step 1. Step 2 would be to heal. Heal. If you have traumatic events in your life, or you've gone through some things that have shaped your brain chemistry, like I have with experiencing sexual assault, you need to make sure that you're not suppressing those things and burying those things, because those things will rear their ugly head when you least expect it. And in my case, unfortunately, those things started rearing their ugly head when I was already married and having to deal with the remnants of sexual trauma and things like porn and lust. And you don't want that stuff following you into your marriage and your family life. So heal. What does healing look like? Healing may look like you getting connected into a community where you can confess your sin to. Healing may look like you perhaps finding a good Christian therapist that can walk you through some of these things. Healing may look like you walking through the journey of owning whatever it is that's happened to you, the sins that have been done against you, and the sins that you yourself have committed because perhaps you didn't know any better at the time. So you have to heal. I tell my family all the time, we can't just go from being dysfunctional and jumping to flourishing. Because if you go from being dysfunctional to flourishing, Proverbs says that an inheritance attained too early in life is not a blessing in the end. Meaning that if you get all of your wildest dreams, when you haven't walked through the process of having the character, it will ruin you. And we see that all the time, do we not? We see people in my profession, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, influencers, athletes, they get all their wildest dreams and it becomes like a pile of bricks that hits them. So you want to make sure you're doing the healing. For me, healing also looked like getting serious about my physical fitness, going to the gym, working out, channeling that testosterone that a lot of us young men have, okay? The step after that would be now this is an important one, to learn how to skill stack. To learn how to skill stack. Remember, you're serving, so you're trying different things. In step one, you're healing, but then you got to learn how to skill stack. What does skill stacking mean? It means that when I first started on this journey of wanting to be a creative entrepreneur, I took inventory of the skills that I had, and the only skill I really had initially was I knew how to use a computer. And because I knew how to use a computer, I then learned to record myself and record music. And then I learned how to make the beats. And then I learned how to mix the songs. And then I was able to use the software, so then I learned how to edit the video. Then after I learned how to edit the video, I learned how to shoot the video. Then I learned how to run the broadcast. Then I learned how to edit the broadcast. Then I learned how to do, right? And so I took the one skill of learning how to use a computer, and I stacked other skills on top of that skill and created a lock of sorts that combined all of these different skills together. Okay, so you have to learn to skill stack. Some of you guys don't have a lot of skills. Start with what you already have and add on top of that. Does skill stacking make sense? Okay. Step number 4, take inventory of the relationships and the favor that you already have. Take inventory of the people you're already connected to. Take inventory of the church you go to. Take inventory of the teachers you have. Take inventory of the families you have. And so as you're trying to decide, being a young adult, where do I drive my purpose? Where do I drive my vision? Take inventory of what's already in front of you. You see, when David went to fight Goliath, Saul tried to put his armor on David. You guys remember this story? And David shockingly took the armor off because it didn't fit him. And what did David do? It says that David took the sling and the rock that was already in his hand. Okay? It was the thing that was already in his hand. So my question to you is, what relationships do you already have access to? What proximity do you already have? If you are in a family that is connected to some sort of trade, consider that. If you're connected to people that are entertainment, consider that, right? That's step 4 is take inventory of your relationships. Step 5 would be to work to eat. Work to eat. So much of our society is depleting in the sense that people don't like work anymore. There's an entitlement. I just want what I want and the government should give it to me or whatever. Paul writes that a man who not work ought not eat. Paul also writes that a man who does not provide for the needs of his family, specifically his immediate family, is worse than a non-believer and has denied the faith. That's a real Bible verse. Okay? So we have to learn to work to eat. Working to eat is about doing what you need to do to be responsible in this season right now, to start paying for the bills, to start contributing, to start saving, to start giving. That starts right now. You have to learn to work to eat. And if you aren't working to eat, you're going to be off balance because you're not going to have any responsibility. As you're working to eat, simultaneously, you have to learn to sow to reap for the next season. You have to sow to reap for the next season. That's step 6. Meaning that I don't plant seed today to have a harvest tomorrow. I plant seed today to have a harvest next year. Okay? So many of us are wanting this microwave result with our faith, with our family, with our finances, and you think that if you just do something one time, then you'll get all the results in the world. No. You have to work to eat and be present in the moment, and you have to sow to reap for the next season of your life, utilizing everything we just talked about. So think about the things you're sowing into, thinking about the things that you are doing now that will yield a harvest in a year, 2, 5, 10 years from now. What most of us do, unfortunately, is we overestimate how much we can get done in a year, and we underestimate how much we can get done in a decade. You want to be successful, you want to give back to your community, you want to build organizations like Live Action. That's a decade-long process. That's not going to happen in a year or two. That's going to take a decade, right? And so we overestimate. So you have to sow to reap, and you have to work to eat. And then the last step is simply commit to the process over a long enough time horizon where it is unreasonable for you not to be successful. That's the 7th step. These things take time. Most of us are impatient. Most of us want it right now. But it's better the longer scenic route because your character will develop. When I used to do independent Christian music, we talked about taking the stairs instead of the elevator because the stairs will get you conditioned better, right? The elevator will get you there faster, but you won't be in the same conditional state. I want to just stop and talk to the young men in the room. I know there's only about 30% of this audience is men, maybe 35%. I'm going to give you guys a shocking statistic. Okay, so ladies, you're off the hook right now. Okay, just listen to whatever Lila tells you guys. All right. Gallup did a poll, and they surveyed working women with kids 18 and under. And they found out that working women, kids 18 and under, not with little kids, not with 5-year-olds, not with 10-year-olds, working women with kids 18 and under, not conservative women, not Christian women, not Catholic women, not pro-life women, working women with kids 18 and under, they did a survey. And they found out that working women with kids 18 and under, 56% of working women with kids 18 and under would have preferred to stay home and raise their kids had they been given the opportunity to. That's Gallup. That's not a Christian source. That's not a conservative. That's not TradCon. Okay. So young men, are you in this current season preparing for the next season of life? The version of you from 10 years in the future is depending on this version of you to make good decisions. The version of you 10 years in the future that's going to want a family, that's going to want kids, is depending on this version of you to perhaps play a little bit less video games. Perhaps don't be like the average American that spends 30 hours a week consuming Netflix, television, and YouTube. Unless you're watching my channel, of course. Perhaps scale that back and start developing some useful skills. Scale that back and start becoming more competent. Because at some point, you will want a family, and you will want to have kids, and you will want a certain lifestyle for your family, and you will want to be there, and you will want your wife to be there. And your wife, statistically speaking, will probably want to be home at least with your kids when they're little. That's what the data says. So what are we doing right now to prepare ourselves for that version of you 10 years from now? Because the decisions you're making aren't just going to impact you, they're going to impact your future spouse, they're going to impact your future kids, they're going to impact your future extended family. So consider what you're doing now. Consider the time you're spending aimlessly scrolling on TikTok. How many of you guys are praying that it gets banned so you don't have to be on TikTok no more? Just delete the app. Delete it now. And take inventory. What are you doing? Are you serving somewhere? Are you serving somewhere? Are you healing? Are you talking to anyone about your issues? Right? Are you skill stacking? Are you developing yourself outside of the indoctrination of whatever your school wants to teach you if you're in a public school system, right? Are you taking inventory of the relationship and the proximity and the access you have? Are you learning to work to eat and sowing for the next season, sowing to reap? And do you understand that this is going to take longer than you anticipated? It's probably going to take a decade. But that version of you from 10 years in the future, that version of you is depending on this version of you to make better decisions. So consider what season you're in and the opportunity that we have. Imagine if your generation, the Zoomers in here, they like to call you Zoomers, begin to build culture, not just in response to the nonsense that's happening in society, but we begin to lead culture in the direction of life, of goodness, of beauty, of truth. So we get to make that choice today. Thank you guys so much. My name is Ruslan.